We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I'm the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I'm super excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Dale Favors. He is the Managing Partner at Adaptive Growth Leadership. Dale, thank you so much for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our audience, including your pronouns and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question of what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah, Dale Favors, originally from Dayton, Ohio, and live and reside currently in South Orange, New Jersey. I am, as you stated, the managing partner of Adaptive Growth Leadership. We are a consulting firm focused on creating better outcomes, opportunities, and pipelines for organizations that are trying to make sure they have a culture that is rich in diversity, inclusivity, and providing access for all. So that's what we do. The pronouns he, his, him, he, him, his. And I would tell you, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a businessman. And I didn't know what that was, but I knew that I wanted to dress up and be important and meet people and travel the world and solve problems. That's what I did. And I think what I did well was I built relationships well. And I always was inclusive about bringing other people into that group that I may have been a part of. I wanted everyone to get a piece of it because I thought we all had something to offer. And that's what I continue to do these days, I guess you could say.
I love that. Continuing to meet people, solve problems, and really help folks build a culture rich in diversity, inclusivity, empowering folks to do their best work. I want to ask you about company culture because that is a key to feel like people have what they need to be successful, have the resources, and with all the changes happening over the last few years, it's something that people are really looking for, great managers, and really a best-in-class company culture. Do you think that the easiest way to improve upon company culture is really to identify any barriers or workplace issues? Why or why not?
I would tell you the workplace is changing. And let's think about this. We've changed a lot through this period of uncertainty during the pandemic, in which we were all locked up and working at home and with our families. As people migrated back into the office, that has been a slow process of getting people to buy into being back into spaces in which a number of people exist and hang out and execute and engage. The organizations, corporations, nonprofits, whatever, in an effort to be open, they've said, look, we're going to work hybrid, or we're going to have people work from home, or you choose how you want to work. But they've created more ways for us to engage. And with technology, we have different forms of way we can engage via a platform like Zoom, whether it's Teams or whatever it happens to be. The key piece is the core fundamentals still exist. You can still breathe culture into environments in which you may not be all in the same place. And that is by the activities that you have and you engage your employees that way. So you can create culture that way. You can create an understanding of what the company's purpose and mission is through the statements that it delivers and through how the actions that they do, how they engage with using ESG to engage in environmental issues, the way they govern themselves as far as leaders and the organization is governed, as well as looking at social issues and how the company wants to engage and create ways in which employees can work to make change in their communities. That all can exist whether we're in person or not in person. What really comes down to is how companies now share the purpose and share the purpose of leading people in their and putting that in their leaders, right? Really saying to their leadership team, not just at the top, but throughout the organization, how are we best empowering our employees? How are we encouraging those employees to be the best of themselves? How are we giving them safe spaces in which they can exist, share ideas, share differences, solve grievances, and come to solutions that in the end are best for the customer, the shareholder, and the community at large. That's what I think still continues to remain the same. If companies can do that through educating, educating and developing their managers to be inclusive in the way they lead their individual people, but also being open and understanding of how the different needs that people have at different times in their lives. That's what's all important.
Yeah, sharing in that purpose of leading people, the folks that are really interacting with your customers, who are leading the business. And you're right, managers have a huge impact on the team culture that they build, and also their inclusive behaviors on a day-to-day basis as well. I know for our pre-call, we are talking about, the variety of organizations that you work with, and a lot of folks come to our webinars that we also host and want to hear about some trends or patterns you're seeing working with your clients. When you think about 2022, what are some of the kind of trends you're seeing with the folks who work with adaptive growth leadership?
Yeah, I think since 2020, companies have become more open with creating safe spaces for their employees, creating spaces in which their employee resource groups are having activities that tie back into the overall corporate mission and the corporations focus on diversity, equity, inclusion. So it's tying those in, creating metrics to help all of us drive, all of the employees, I'll say, drive the intentions of the organization. And so I see that happening, and I've seen that happen since 2020. And I think it continues to have momentum. And, as other things, like I talked about ESG, environmental, social, and governance, how that continues to have a big position in what the senior corporate leaders are thinking about and how they're operating the company. This continues to be things. So I think there's enough emphasis on things that are about purpose-driven activities, and it has put senior leaders in positions to say, listen, we can lead with a purpose and still be fundamentally sound financially successful. We can do all of that at the same time. And so I see a lot more companies finding ways to do that, encouraging their leaders at different levels to get the most out of their employees by also giving those employees spaces and encouraging them to give of themselves, but also really speak out about things that they have emotional ties to, and allowing them to be open about who they are individually, whether that's gender oriented things or sexual orientation type things. Be yourself. Bring the best of yourself to work, but also be sensitive to others and be open to conversations that may at one point in time have been uncomfortable, and maybe they still are, but it allows for open dialogue, which I think people end up getting to know each other better. And that's what I find a lot of companies are encouraging more of that. And they're beginning to see that individuals are more productive, they're more engaged, and they're more collaborative.
Yeah, that word purpose has been coming up a lot, and just the role that managers and executives have to breathe in that culture through the team dynamics that they set up, those non-negotiables. And like you were talking about, everybody is at a different part of their career, their journey as well. I want to dig into leadership a little bit more, because I think you're right. Since 2020, we've seen a lot of folks really lean into being more empathetic leaders, leading with curiosity. How have you seen really those leaders, especially those mid-level managers, people managers, successfully lead with empathy and vulnerability? What does that look like in practice?
I think here's what I believe managers should be inspired to do, and that is look at each individual employee as an individual, find out what what makes that person tick? What gets that person excited every day to come into work and be a contributor? And then challenge that individual to not only be themselves, but stretch themselves. And so I think part of managing people is finding ways to get someone to stretch. It might be asking someone to lead a team meeting. And that person, usually the quiet person in the room, and they're like, I don't really like to speak a lot. So you're like, well, I think part of you being, they could say part of you kind of growing as a professional, maybe at some point in time being a leader in this firm, is you can be a quiet leader, but we still need you to speak up and have a voice. So encourage them to have a voice, but also help them through any insecurities they may have, or things that, and provide them with access to training or encourage them to go and get the things that would allow them to be more comfortable sharing in these spaces. There's some reason for it. Everyone has something to offer and contribute. It is the manager's job to identify how they can best get each individual to contribute, and then buy into each individual's personal and professional development. That is what a manager's job should be. And that is how I believe managers get the most productivity out of each one of their employees.
Yeah, and again, not having the development and the stretch assignments be separate or siloed out from the productivity or the success of the business. I think, managers recognizing that each person has different motivations, different strengths, and also different opportunities to grow is really important too. And when we think about leaders, oftentimes we think about, the feedback that their team has about their leadership style. Are there any other ways when you think about effective leadership, how companies can think about measuring the success of leaders, especially people managers? Is it, the number of stretch assignments, or, the ways in which they elevate their team?
I think it's not only looking ways to help people get stretch assignments, but also finding ways to stretch themselves as managers. So going into maybe it's allowing, let's say you're going to take the team out for a team dinner or a team lunch, choosing different places that might have a tie into, maybe it's one of the particular months in which we're celebrating a heritage month. And maybe what happens is you encourage the team as a group to go out and share a lunch together that's tied back to one of the specific heritage months, but also provide some insight into how this heritage month may touch that individual manager, and then encourage others to find out more and say, hey, look, you know what? I didn't know much about this, but as I did some more research, I found out this, and it allowed me to grow. And so being vulnerable as a manager, and also encouraging others to share and be vulnerable is one important thing. So they have to understand that leadership is not, I sit in a silo, I make all the decisions. It's leadership is encouraging others to be the best of themselves, but also getting others and yourself personally as a leader to do things out of the norm from a standpoint of make yourself become comfortable being uncomfortable, whether that's providing insight into your own insecurities or your own things that may have a impact on you and that you want to share with the team. So I think the more that people can share, and especially managers, it brings people closer together, and it also encourages people to want to work for that manager and perform.
Absolutely. Doing your best and continually learning as a manager, pushing yourself with your own stretch assignments, and also to lean into things that you don't necessarily have all the answers to as well. And really being open to listening to feedback from your team, all kinds of feedback. I know we were also talking about in terms of just trends you're seeing. Some folks that you work with are in the financial services industry, which I would argue is not best known for being the most diverse and most inclusive. From your perspective, what opportunity do you see really, finance and financial services having to foster more diversity, equity, and inclusion, and really cultivate that in a proactive way?
Yeah, I think there's two things I wanted to tap on that you said that I thought were good. Was one is leaning in, and and then the other is understanding how to lead, not only by leading others, but also by learning from others. And some of that is sometimes it's taking feedback from others. I think those two things are extremely important. But I would tell you that what companies and individuals are doing in the space of financial services is everyone understands access to opportunity, access to capital, access to networks are the things that lead to opportunity for others. And so many companies are looking at how can they be more inclusive with providing access to opportunity, but also access to capital. So they're creating more opportunities for small business or minority owned or women owned businesses to get access to capital, but also get access to the networks that will allow for additional access to capital and opportunity. Because sometimes if you're not tied into the right networks, then you can't, a traditional lending organization may not be the best path for you, but an alternative lending opportunity might be a better path, but you have to have access to those people and those networks to understand how that works. And then you have to have an understanding of the movement of capital. So I think a lot of companies are starting to figure out ways that they can engage diverse communities to share more access to networks, more access to capital. And again, that leads to access to the opportunity.
Yeah, access to opportunity, democratizing information, networking, and just the available opportunities as well. I think that is also critical to remember too. One of the things that we're also talking about is leaning in. We're talking about initiatives, what managers can do, these really tactical actions that can be taken, as well measuring the effectiveness of leaders. And oftentimes another question that comes up is, how do we know that we are making progress? We know that this doesn't happen overnight, but consistent actions on a daily, weekly basis are important as well. Can you give an example of really measuring progress with specific diversity, equity, and inclusion goals, knowing that it'll be different for each company, no matter their stage, their size, and industry as well?
Yeah, I would tell you, I've talked to a number of companies, and there's large companies and there's small companies. Some large companies began to look at diversity and say, hey, look, you know what? We have a large organization and we can begin to have an impact and improve our diversity numbers because we have a lot of spaces where we can put people, right? Yes, we can put some of them on the front lines. Yes, we can put some of those individuals in operations. Yes, we can put them in other areas of the firm, and it works. And yes, we can also do things through supplier diversity programs where we are using diverse suppliers for different things that we're acquiring in our procurement process. And we can add more diverse owned companies in our supply chain. All that works. And so large companies do that. Smaller companies look and they like, listen, we probably hire 3 to 5 people a year, and there's no way we're going to ever hit aggressive targets for diversity. And it's helping them understand, well, there's many ways you can look at this. You can bring in interns, which now those interns have an opportunity to potentially come back, but maybe through the experience that they had working at their organization, they now are able to secure a full-time role somewhere else a year later. All those things are helpful to the overall industry. The other thing is getting those organizations to also consider adding more diverse suppliers in their supply chain network. And they don't need to have a very vast supplier diversity program, but just knowing that, hey, listen, we spend so much in whatever every year in supplies and what have you every year. Let's take a portion of that spend and try and be more deliberate about spending with diverse owned companies. So that's one way to do it. Another one is they can use diverse owned organizations in securing talent. They don't only have to, and those diverse organizations don't only have to deliver diverse talent, but maybe they deliver all talent. But now they can add that individual company into that talent acquisition process. They can also look to use diverse vendors and suppliers in other ways, such as, hey, look, putting on a research conference, or we're putting on a holiday party. Let's use a diverse provider of services in order to do that. So there's so many different ways that they can look at and secure and improve diversity engagement, right? I like to call it engagement. It's diversity engagement. They can do it not only through their hiring practices, but through the practices of hiring as far as people internally in the firm, but also through their practices of engaging with diverse and women-owned providers of services. So it's getting them to see there's many ways to solve this issue of diversity, equity, inclusion. Just be creative.
Absolutely, leaning into creativity and knowing that there's no one answer, and really thinking about inclusive design, and all of the questions that you can ask yourself about how, we can all do better once we invoke new strategies, learn, and then once you test things as well, adapt them too and lean into what's working, understand what's not, and the why behind it as well. Dale, I want to pass it back to you in our last kind of few minutes to see if there's anything that I didn't specifically ask that you want to share with folks who are listening, or underscoring any key takeaways that you hope people really bring with them after they hear our conversation today.
I think you did a great job in asking me the questions. I would encourage many firms in the work that we do is we get calls from organizations often that want to solve the problem that, or I'm glad to see there's so many companies, and I'm encouraged by the number of organizations that want to become more diverse, that want to figure out how the things that they can do and practices that they can implement within the organization to encourage diversity, be more inclusive, as well as be equitable across the organization. I think that the more we all work together to solve this problem, the better it's going to be in the long run. I think it's going to allow organizations to be more efficient. It's going to allow those organizations to potentially become more productive, as well as more profitable. I think it ties all together, because a diverse group of employees are going to allow you to tap into diverse markets. It's going to allow you to have a perspective on how to deliver a message to consumers that come in all shapes, sizes, colors, what have you. And I believe that it also allows managers and team leaders and senior managers to understand the value of having a diverse network of friends and colleagues and people that you can pick up on and call. And it's not just from one homogeneous group of people who might all belong to the same club, growing up in the same neighborhood, or went to the same college. You want to have that diverse population and network, and that's what lets us all become more powerful, more productive, and hopefully more profitable.
Absolutely. We are in this together, and the community. And again, that access is so important when you're thinking about designing processes and really bringing people forward in your organization as well. Dale, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
Thank you. Enjoy your day.
Of course. And as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in helping companies uncover and resolve workplace issues by giving employees a safe space to speak up. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.